Hi there and welcome to MiWeek. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Christy McDonald. Michigan's Attorney General in Washington in front of the Supreme Court this week over the state's ban on affirmative action. And Congress, well, it gets its act together over the shutdown and the debt ceiling. But will voters forgive them next year? There's a new man in charge of Michigan's finances after the resignation of State Treasurer Andy Dillon. But we start tonight with Detroit City Hall and the accusations that Detroit EM Kevyn isn't competent to run city operations. Who said that? Well, Mayor Dave Bing in a deposition about the city's bankruptcy. We know that there is no love lost between the two. Orr's appointment sidelined Bing pretty much, but is Orr getting the job done? And this comes the same week as the city's CFO resigns after making a racially charged comment. Let's get started tonight with our MiWeek contributors and the editorial page editors of the Detroit News and Detroit Free Press, Nolan Finley and Stephen Henderson. Gentlemen, it's always good to see you.
Good to be here.
We have a lot to talk about this week, but I want to start off with this little war of the words at City Hall. I was slightly surprised that Dave Bing has kind of come out swinging in his last couple of months in office. Are you surprised by this?
Well, if there were any sort of consistency to Dave Bing and his remarks about the situation in Detroit, you might be surprised. But, you know, one day he's on board, the next day he's off board. I thought it was really sad yesterday to hear him say that. Really unfortunate, actually, to hear him talk about Kevyn Orr not being able to run the city and being incompetent. And you know what was going through people's mind as he was saying it is, wait a minute, who got us to this point? And I thought he left himself wide open, and he would be better off just, you know, sort of going out with some class, some grace, and basically keeping his mouth shut.
Is he trying to protect his legacy in some sense, Stephen, or why is he coming out like this?
If he is, this is an odd way to do it. I think his feelings are hurt. This is a guy with a lot of pride, and I think rightfully feels like he did this job out of a sense of obligation and is probably owed some respect and deference for that. And Kevyn Orr, that's not what he's here for. He's here to fix the mess that we're in, and he's not worried about Dave Bing's feelings. And so, the mayor's a little cranky about that, and that's how he looks here. It's like cranky, right? It's not even anger so much as he just seems grumpy about it. At the same time, I think he's making a valid point about the difficulty that Kevyn is having managing city operations. It's not going as well as management of the bankruptcy for a lot of reasons that are Dave Bing's fault.
Is he incompetent, though?
He's not incompetent, but he does not have a track record of he's never run anything more than a lemonade stand in his life. He is a bankruptcy attorney, and he's very, very highly skilled at that. He's not, running city government is very complicated, and I think he pretty soon is going to need a partner who is experienced at that to help him restructure. Dave Bing was supposed to be that partner. That was the original framework of this, and of course he got here and discovered that Dave Bing is part of the problem in City Hall.
So you look at all good relationships and then you wonder where it went wrong. What went wrong here?
Well, I don't think they ever had a very good relationship, and you can understand that it was a difficult decision for Bing to get into. But he did bring Gary Brown in and put him in charge of restructuring.
What's Gary run before?
Well, Gary Brown comes out of the city council. In terms of political leadership, he's about
political leadership,
and that's what we've had in terms of the mayor's office. If you're looking for a surrogate mayor to run operations, Gary Brown would fit that bill. He's also brought in, what are we paying a month in consultants? You would think those consultants would have some expertise in management. I don't think that the city is being run any worse than it was run before Kevyn Orr came into office. And I would suggest it's being run a lot better. You're going to see the fruits of things you're already seeing.
Some stuff will start to come online.
Of a lot of things. But to me, it just highlights that the impossible situation that we're in here, where you have an elected mayor and an emergency manager, and it's only going to get worse in January when a new mayor
that's what I think is the big problem.
That's what we can't afford to have. We cannot afford to have that. In fact,
how do you avoid it?
What we need is for whoever the new mayor is, whether it's Mike Duggan or Benny Napoleon, to become that partner in restructuring government. Because the truth is, Kevyn cannot do it with consultants who are not going to be here long term, and he can't do it with Gary Brown, who I adore Gary in terms of his service on council, but he doesn't have the kind of managerial experience you're talking about. You have got to have somebody in there who can put a team together to actually manage the city going forward, better than we've have in the past.
But given the comments that you've already heard from Betty Napoleon and Mike Duggan, this is going to be an
think that's
uphill
gonna be
battle
a real
because
problem.
they already want Kevyn Orr out tomorrow.
And Mike Duggan is convinced that as soon as he's elected, Rick Snyder's going to say, "Well, you're gone, Kevyn Orr." Now he's making the case that, well, Kevyn can run the bankruptcy, I'll run the city operation. It's not going to work like that. They're too intertwined. And if the new mayor comes in, I agree with Steve. They need to work together. And if you could rely on the new mayor to handle operations, that would be a perfect scenario. But I'm not sure you can rely on either one of these guys to get on board, take that, what's still going to be a subservient role, and cooperate, and not
And
obstruct.
the key to this is going to be
Big egos are the
Yeah.
who is the new mayor going to be able to surround themselves with, right? This has been the problem in City Hall forever. Dave Bing would have been a much more successful mayor if he could have attracted higher caliber talent and kept it. Of course, his biggest problem was the revolving door. 55 people coming and going over 4 years. You're not going to get a lot done. Can Mike Duggan attract better people who will stay to run these departments? That is the problem that Kevyn has now, is that there's nobody to execute the restructuring that he's talking about. And that, I think, does fall on Dave Bing, who hired these department heads, has never held them accountable, has never had, they don't even have performance management going on in
But he was offered
City
the
Hall.
opportunity when he came into office. He was offered all sorts of assistance by the business community. We will loan you executives, and he didn't take advantage of that.
Why didn't he take advantage of that, do you think, Nolan?
I have no idea. I think he surrounded himself with people who gave him a lot of bad advice in the beginning.
Well, I mean, I also think loaned executives would have helped early on, but you still had to create a stable, competent core of managers in City Hall to run city departments, and we have not had that.
Had you been able to fix the structure and made it a more
might have made it
functional
more
place,
attractive.
it would have been more attractive for people to come in. And I think that's going to be the challenge. But my big worry is you get these two big egos together, and a new mayor is going to want to assert himself, is not going to want to go to the shadows. How do you keep them from butting heads publicly?
And you've got
every day?
you've
And
got a
it's
new
really bad
council
for-
that's going to want to assert itself
That's
as
going to
well.
want to be in the mix and having some say. I think this all starts on November 6th, right?
Exactly.
You have got to get all of these people in a room and start figuring out not just how it's going to work in January, but how it's going to work in September if Kevyn Orr leaves and we go back to elected governors.
And Orr's worried about this. The governor's office is worried about this. I mean, they're not going to be surprised by it. I don't know if they'll have a solution in place, but they're very much working on this idea of how do we mesh the new elected officials with the emergency manager, because I mean, there's only so much authority and power Kevyn Orr can cede and still trust that these elected officials won't walk the city off the dock again.
Now, the mayor has said that Orr has not gone and done a lot of the infrastructure. They're still concerned about crime, the fire department, police department, the lighting, the buses. Is that fair criticism for Kevyn Orr?
It's not fair criticism coming from someone who had 5 years or 6 years to do it. What is it, 6, 7?
5.
And didn't do it. I mean, it would be fair criticism perhaps, and I don't think it's fair from anyone because he hasn't had that much time, and he is putting things in place that will pay off. But it's not fair criticism for the guy who didn't get it done. For whatever reason, he didn't get it done.
Yeah, I mean, the timing here is not fair. It's been 7 months. You were not going to fix DPD or DFD in that time. I think where the criticism has merit is in that Kevyn has not even put in the infrastructure yet to be able to manage that stuff going forward. And even the consultants are somewhat frustrated by the inability for the stuff that they're coming up with to be executed.
So what's the problem? Is it because he's concentrating too much on the financial and the bankruptcy, or what?
You have a broken culture
Yeah.
in City Hall.
Right.
And that's been true. That was the same thing that's
So then can
stifled-
anybody do this job? I mean, if
Yeah. See, and
Yeah,
that's the
you
thing.
can, but
Kevyn has much more power than any mayor has had before, and I think the expectation was that he'd come in and wipe out a lot of this culture that
believe he
wasn't
will.
working. I think he will. I hope he will. I think there are some early wins I might have gone for quicker if I were him, and he'd have some stuff to show for it. It is not valid criticism, as you said, coming from a guy who sat around for 5 years and didn't do it.
Kevyn Orr had to prioritize. I mean, Kevyn Orr has
Right. And the
now
finances come
a
first.
huge challenge on his hand
Yeah.
working with those creditors.
Yeah.
There'll come a point when this all goes into the bankruptcy court, all that negotiating, all of that hard work will be passed, and he will turn his attention then, I think to
that's right.
restructuring. But you've got to change top to bottom the culture of City Hall.
Does it reflect poorly on him that the CFO resigned this week after that racially insensitive
It's
comment that he
embarrassing,
made?
right?
Of course. I mean, you never know what somebody's going to say, and this guy.
But the fact that it was known that it was said, and it was like, well, we'll think about it, and then he'll resign.
Yeah.
Being said, I would have fired him immediately.
Well, the problem with Dave Bing is he never would have hired someone like Jim Bonsall with that skill set in the first place. And we know that's true because we have 5 years of a record to show that he could not attract talent at that level. Now, this guy turns out to be an insensitive
Talent
lout
who doesn't know how to
who's got to
speak
go.
correctly to people.
But
that
he
doesn't.
was
Yeah.
extremely good
Yeah.
at what he
And-
did. He was the kind of fellow you need in City Hall. He just is clueless about what you can.
You think about, they're talking in City Hall about how close they are to having a balance sheet that's actually in balance. That's the work that this guy's been doing since he's been here. You want to pick that up and not turn it back over to the people who had it out of whack in the first place.
But how you can hear yourself saying that and not realize you're about to.
That's absolutely
Self-destruct.
that's absolutely unacceptable. But I do agree with what you say, Stephen and Nolan, that this is going to start the day after the election. That whoever is going to be mayor, or else you're going to be hearing a lot more from that mayor than you were even hearing the complaining from Dave Bing. That it kind of dribs and drabs came out. He complained and then he's quiet for a while, and then he complains again and he's quiet.
Well, I think it's going to be worse than that. I mean, Dave whines, complains, grumbles, but. These guys, I think, will be actively obstructive
and they will
if
be
they don't
assertive.
sign on.
Well, and they each want to be sure that there is a plan to get elected officials back in charge. And I think the governor and Kevyn have got to negotiate that out before January 1st.
Oh, absolutely.
All right.